Hey guys, MuJK here with my third top 10 list. Again, disclaimer, this is just my opinion. I explain my reasoning, but you're allowed to disagree and you can leave it in the comments below. Just please be respectful. This is my assessment of the current meta and my first-hand experience with each of these characters. Everybody is going to use them differently, might have different party compositions where other characters shine really well. So that's okay. Everybody's list is going to look different. Also, for the first time in this list, I assume that the player using these characters is going to have dual wield, dual cast, and even potentially double hand materia. So it's a little bit different this time, but I know a lot of people were kind of commenting on that. At this point, everybody should have at least like some of the top three materias or whatever. So let's get on with it. That's my disclaimer. So number 10 is our new free healer Y'shtola, and her pros are that she has all the essentials. That's Kiraja, Raze, Asuna. Her Shroud of Saints gives her MP and survivability. The fact that she's targeted 50% less is a real big plus for somebody you want to keep alive as much as possible. She also has a new ability that can fully heal one target, and as we inch higher and higher in the HP pool, especially with tanks, that's a very useful skill. The fact that she's free is really a good positive, I think, and she also has innate dual cast. Now, again, this list is made with dual cast assumed, but even with dual cast assumed, she's still top 10 in my opinion. And a big reason for that actually is because of her free exclusive gear. Her staff and her robe are TMR level, so if you farmed up her staff and her robe, already she's got a head start compared to other healers you might have. Yes, you might have all the possible healer TMRs out there, and you can buff them up really well, but for most players, the fact that she comes with that great gear is going to be a real big plus for her. Now, her only minuses are that she lacks innate status resistances, so she's going to need like a ribbon or something to resist those things like paralyze for the Ifrit fight or any other fight. So that's one downside as compared to a certain other healer. She also doesn't have full life, which is kind of a bummer, but you can kind of make up for that if you raise and then you dual cast raise and then you do Kiraja and then you have maybe a backup healer to help out with that. So it's not the end of the world. And also her defensive buffs, Proteka and Shelga, are single stat only. They're not as good as something like Embolden or Focus, which do 2 stats at one time, so that's a little bit of a downer as well. She is a base 5-star, but that doesn't really matter. She's free, and as long as you farmed the event or got lucky with the raid summons, you should have her. So that's why she's number 10, very good unit. And if I were to assume no dual cast, for the purpose of this list, she would actually be the highest ranked healer. But with dual cast assumed, she is the second best healer in global, and she's still top 10. Number 9 is Yun or Yun. Maybe some people will disagree with me on this particular unit, but I'll explain my reasoning. Again, you can disagree with me if you want. I did chase this unit a little bit, but I didn't get him, but I have tried him out a couple times, more than a couple times. But he does have high attack potential. He has high innate critical rate, which is really good. 40% critical rate is really good considering the number of hits he does. And he also has innate resistance to fire and some status ailments. And you need 2 Yuns who to really chain like crazy. Now the downsides are kind of implied in the highlights or the pros, and the fact that you need to get a lot of TMRs is a little bit of a downer for me. His weapon pool generally requires TMR weapons to be good. Like for instance, there's no good fist weapon except for Kaiser Knuckles, and you need to farm the TMR for that. His chaining potential is very limited because you need 2 Yuns. They're just way too fast with the attacks, and other characters are not going to be able to chain effectively with them. And because he's a rare unit, that means that you're not going to be able to find a ton of Yuns on your friend list, or maybe some of you can, but I personally can't. The way that chaining works, just as a quick aside, is that if you have one, like Unit A and Unit B attacking, you need to have their attacks alternate with each other. If Yun's attack is so fast that he does 2 attacks in a row himself, that's going to break the chain. So that's why he's hard to chain with in general. And he's also a little bit hard to take full advantage of the lowering fire res, which is basically he's able to lower the fire resistance of a boss or an enemy, but he needs a fire weapon of some sort, or he needs to use a less than ideal single target attack. I think his AoE attack has fire attached to it, but you don't want to be doing that. So, and as far as I'm aware, there's not too many fire weapons that he can equip either, so it's a little bit hard to take advantage of. That's why I put him at number 9, although he's a great unit. He's a little bit hard to make work. Now, number 8 is Gilgamesh, and this is including dual wield, and some of you might be a little bit surprised to see that he hasn't moved up even higher because of that. But keep in mind that this list has been, there's been a little bit of a gap from part 2, so this is over the course of maybe 2 months or almost 2 months that he's, he's still in the top 10, so that's pretty impressive. He has high attack when built right, particularly when you use a katana and a sword, the way that he gets his passives. He has a damaging AoE and finisher move in 1, which is Snow Petal, by far his best attack. It's a 1.8 multiplier with a 50% defense ignore, which works out in most cases 3.6. Very good attack, and it's a really quick kind of single attack each hit, or each time you proc it or use it, because that makes it a good finishing move. You don't want to have too many hits in a finishing move. And then also he has options when it comes to single target and AoE. If you don't want to use Snow Petal because the MP cost is too great against a single target, you can use Tri Attack for less mana or MP for a little bit lower multiplier, but it's still very good. And then he also has Wind Slash, which is a pretty decent AoE if you want to conserve MP as well. His downsides are that he has no innate status immunities, and in my opinion, against these boss fights, these tough battles, these are becoming very, very important. And if you were to use a ribbon or something similar, you're wasting a potential TMR spot for something else. So that's a little bit of a downside. Also, he has very little utility. I mean, he's pretty much just a damage dealer, so he does it well, but that is a little bit of a downside if you compare him to the other units. Number 7 is Ling, who is a Brave Exvius limited unit, along with Yun. They were on the Chinese, the Lunar New Year banner. She has an amazing toolkit and has something for everything almost. Her debuffs are very strong. They tend to be 45% debuffs instead of your usual 30-40%. And she's a really good support unit. She can AoE revive. She can get rid of status ailments for everybody, restore MP for everybody. A lot of these are, because they're AoE, they're helping the whole party. It's really good. She doesn't have to worry about which target to select or whatever. It's just all across the board. She also has high innate dodge passive, the highest in the game. She has an innate 40% dodge, and she also has resistance to fire and various status ailments, making her a very good support that's going to stay alive, basically. She also becomes a great arena unit with Ring of the Lucia. I just put this as a star or asterisk because this doesn't really determine her ranking, but you see a lot of Lings at high level play, and there's a reason for that. She's able to dodge like a champ with the Ring of the Lucia. She's able to dodge at a 65% rate, and she becomes pretty scary with Alterna. Her only downside really is that she's a little bit redundant with Noctis, who does a lot of the same things that she does, but also does a lot of damage at the same time. Ling doesn't really do much damage. But at the same time, Ling's, for instance, her debuffs are stronger than Noctis's, so it's a little bit of a, pros and cons kind of situation with them. But all in all, if you do have a Noctis or even a Noctis friend, and there's plenty of them out there, they do tend to be a little bit more useful in a lot of cases. But overall, Ling is a great unit, and she's, has something for every fight almost. And number 6 is Luneth. He is a pretty, mainstay at the top 10 here. He has high attack with passives, good AoE and single target options. Again, he doesn't have any elementals really, but it's not really a huge downside. You can kind of make up for that with weapon selection. And he also has some status ailment immunities, which helps a lot. He has a lot of things that, a physical attacker should avoid, like, you know, resistance to blind and things like that. I said that his, I think in another video, I said that I was making Dark Knight's Soul TMR because that kind of refreshes him a little bit. With that extra 50%, if he's equipping a sword and heavy armor, he becomes a lot more potent, and he should be equipping a sword anyway for that 20% passive. And once you put this extra TMR on him, he's kind of like almost a new unit. A lot of these new TMRs benefit him really well, including Demon Mail, which is a trial boss reward. So yeah, in a way, he's not going obsolete because of the new gears and TMRs that keep getting introduced into the game. He does, of course, have a limited toolkit, no elemental coverage, which I've already mentioned, and advance is a waste of a turn and skill slot, but in the future, with enhancements, that turns into a really good ability because he can buff himself up and also act on that same turn. So he does get better in the future with enhancements, and he becomes, you know, really good. But even now, he's still pretty good, and I would say that he's number 6 or top 10 for sure. The main reason he's better than Gilgamesh is because of the status immunities. That's just my opinion, and because he benefits so much from these certain things like Mana Blade. I guess Gilgamesh does too, but yeah, it's basically the status immunities. It's only a difference of 2 positions anyway. Cut Through is his main single target ability, Hit All is his AoE, and Your Pendant is the thing that gives him the immunities. Very all-around stable unit. Number 5 is Refia, still our best healer in my opinion. Again, I'm assuming dual cast materia, so she pretty much is the best healer with the dual cast. When you can dual cast Kiraja or full life, or even mix them up, like do full life then Kiraja, it makes her very, very good for keeping your party alive. She also has strong support, and like Embolden is really great ability. It's 5 turns, 45% to attack and defense, and you're gonna almost always want to cast that, especially with the physical meta right now. Why would you not want that? And the 5 turns is really nice. She also has a lot of status immunities. So, you know, like along with Luneth and Refia is a really good stable unit to keep alive and keep up and running. She doesn't have any MP restoration abilities, and she doesn't passively restore like a lot of other newer 6-star units do. So that's a little bit of a downside to her, because she does want to use, you know, dual cast as much as possible, but you know, she's still a really great unit. Probably not going to run out of MP in most cases anyway. And I list the best skills over here on the side. Full life is still just going to be a really good ability overall for a very long time. Number 4 is our boy Cecil. In my opinion, still the best tank, still the best slot efficient tank, I should say. The main reason for that is because aside from being really tanky and good, he's also a good healer. He has Kiraja, and if you have dual cast on him, which again I'm assuming that you do, he becomes a really good healing and support unit. And the fact that he has focus goes hand in hand with Refia, so that you have all your stats covered. It's only 3 turns for him, but even so, it's still really good, and he's not going to have a ton to do every turn anyway, so you know, you can refresh it no problem. His limit burst is still one of the best, and it fills up really quickly. It buffs up 3 of the 4 stats. It's really good to have. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any attacking options like a certain other tank in the future, or debuffs or things like that, but for the most part, he's a really stable, good unit, good backups, support and healer, so that's why he's number 4. I know there's other tanks out there like White Knight Noel who can tank a little bit better, you know, from a pure tanking perspective, but as far as like, you know, you can only bring 5 characters to a fight, he's really good at taking up one of those spots. Now, before I get to the top 3, I will say that the top 3 are kind of a head above the rest of the class. They are kind of what I would consider SS tier or God tier or whatever. And depending on your situation, they can be ordered in any, you know, which way. Number 3 could be number 1. Number 1 could be number 3. It's not really set in stone. So I just wanted to give that little disclaimer before I reveal it. So number 3 is Olive, a global exclusive unit. She can potentially have crazy high attack. I mean, I've seen 1100 plus attack, and in global that's just like by far the best that we have right now. This is of course assuming Double Hand and Sparky, which is a little bit of a downside to her, that you have to farm those up, but her potential is just makes up for that. True Shot is the best single target finisher move in the game. It's actually pretty easy to chain because you can press it and then you have time to react and you can kind of look at the animation, and it's pretty reliable, I think. She also has a very strong debuff, Shattering Shot, which lowers the lightning resistance and defense by 50%. So that's just as good as Elza, who was, had the strongest defense debuff in the game up until this point. But the fact that it's coupled with the lightning resistance down, and that's what Olive does with Sparky as a weapon, is just a really good debuff. I really think Mortar Beacon is a really cool ability. The fact that you don't have to do anything about it, it just kind of comes down on the third turn unexpectedly. It's a really cool ability. It also does a lot of damage, so it could potentially make a difference in a fight. And there's nothing like it in the game so far, so I thought that was really cool. That's where I really wanted her, actually, but unfortunately I didn't get her. Now, I don't know if this is a downside or not, but she works best with chainers in the team. Because her True Shot is like, really just one big shot, what you want to do ideally is have chainers in your team to build up a chain first and have her time it right at the end of that chain. Elemental chaining, of course. So in a way, she's not as effective by herself as a standalone unit, but with the right team composition, she could be really powerful. She could be number one, depending on your team. But that's why she is where she is. And number two is my boy Noctis. He's a very slot efficient unit still has a ton of utility, addresses almost every need. He has high base attack. He has a lot of equipment passives depending on what you wear, so you can kind of customize what you want to do. I say utility again. This is not much change from last time. He has strong single target AoE damage abilities. He really doesn't have too many weaknesses, honestly. His limit burst is amazing. It's the best in the game. The only problem with it is that it's a little bit hard to get up because it costs a lot of the crystals. But the fact that you're doing so much damage and buffing up your entire party for 2 turns is a really good limit burst. That's why I've invested all my LB pots into him. The only downside is that he doesn't have innate status resistances, so if you do put a ribbon on him, you take care of that problem, but it's a little bit of a downer as far as a default Noctis. Yeah, so his best skill is Warp Break is a really good single target ability, but it also couples as a debuff. Last skills, they also do debuff or stop or other effects. Point Warp is a good way to refill his own HP and MP. Cover is a way to restore HP and MP to your whole party. Comeback is a full life, which is crazy to have on this unit. So he covers like almost every need. He also has a tanking ability. I don't know how many times. That might be the one ability that I haven't used on him, but I use pretty much everything else. So all of his skills are useful. It's pretty crazy. And he can do pretty much anything that Ling can do, again, but coupled with damage. So yeah, he's a really great unit. Now, the only reason why he's not number one is because he's not a jack of all trades. He's too good to be a jack of all trades, but like let's say he's a prince of all trades or whatever. He's not the absolute best in any one area, at least not anymore. So it is possible to come up with compositions where you can have like people specializing in certain areas, like have a stronger debuff, have more attack. But as far as slot efficiency and things like that, he's really up there. But an argument can be made for him to be number one as well. But I think he's number 2 right now, and that's yeah, I mean, it can go either way. Anyway, the next screen is going to be the honorable mentions. I might put Fina up here as well. It's situational depending on the type of enemy you're attacking because of all of his killer passives and things like that. But Marie is the best green mage in the game, but you don't always need a green mage. Elza still has that great defense debuff and high attack. With dual wield, she's a really good attacker. Now, the only downside to her, attacking wise, I think, is that her main attack is kind of like a barrage type of ability, which nowadays is getting kind of outdated. The reason it's not that good is because it doesn't do chaining really, and it also isn't a finisher move because it's multiple hits and slow. So it's like neither a chain move nor a finishing move. So that's why I don't think she's ideal, but I mean, she's still a great unit. Lightning is just here because her stats really aren't up to the level of some of the other top attackers in the game right now, and she doesn't really have like that killer ability. You know, she has elemental coverage, sure, but like her single target crushing blow isn't as good as the other top tier units. The multiplier is much lower. It's like 2.7. She's not going to be able to dish out as much damage as the other units, although the innate dual wield is nice. But again, if we're assuming everybody has dual wield, then she really drops off pretty quickly. Dark Fina is the best mage, but mages aren't really the meta right now. There's not too many cases where you'd rather have a mage versus a physical attacker, unless just gear-wise, you know, it's kind of easier to make a mage effective compared to a physical unit because, you know, the gear that you get from trial bosses and things like that can all go to her. It's not like they're competing for the same gear. Luka is here because she's a great healer. She has kind of a lot of the things that Y'shtola has. Again, assuming dual cast, I mean, she could dual raise, dual Asuna, but the main downside to her compared to Y'shtola is that she can't dual cast Curaja. She does have a great curing ability, I think Priestess's Miracle, which does a Curaja level heal plus status ailment removal, but you can't dual cast that, so she's never going to be able to dual cast like a powerful heal, which is her only downside really. Right now, Noel, very good tank, but I just don't think that he's a good tank, but you know, you'd rather have somebody who can do something more than just tank. And from what I've seen, his magic and his you know, abilities don't really do crazy amounts of damage to justify having him in the party. Maybe up to the mid game for sure, but at the end game, the damage just isn't there. And then we have Minfilia, who is one of my favorite units. Really capable green mage, can't dual cast like Marie can, but she also comes with other abilities that are really useful, like buffing up attack by 100%. That is really crazy because especially if you're buffing up the finisher in your party, the person whose attack matters the most, that can be a really effective skill. So I really like her abilities. But yeah, her stats are a little bit low. She can't dual cast certain things that you'd like her to dual cast, but that's why she's an honorable mention. Any of these honorable mention units are really good, so you know, it is what it is. And number one, as you've guessed, is Orlandeau. He has superior damage and chaining potential. I've heard some people say like, you know, you need 2 Orlandeaus and a finisher to be effective. That's actually kind of not true. I mean, even if you just have 2 of them, like you have one of your own, one as a friend, and they're chaining with each other, you're already doing a ton of damage. You don't really need a finisher, although that would be ideal. So he's already doing a lot of damage either way. He also has a pretty powerful debuff to attack in magic. I think it's called Crush Weapon, which does 40%. Stronger than Noctis's debuff. And, you know, the 2 most important things that you want to debuff, I would say, are attack and magic, and he does it in one ability. He's also able to refill his own HP and MP with Duskblade and Night Sword, I believe. Really cool that he can do that. You know, you don't have to really lean on your healer, lean on items, or lean on a Ling or whatever. He's always going to be topped off pretty much, in theory. And the only kind of downside is that he requires a Holy Greatsword to be most effective, but it's not really a downside because a lot of people have Excalibur farmed up anyway. And if you don't, there's still that free Durandal Greatsword, which is a, you know, pretty capable sword. I think it's a 74 attack sword. So for a free sword that anybody can get, you know, that pretty much covers that problem. The downside that I kind of mentioned was that without 2 Orlandeaus, the chaining is largely wasted. Obviously, if you have 2 of the same unit, the timing of their attacks, you know, syncs up really well so that they alternate hits. But let's say you have 1 Orlandeau in your party, but you can't find an Orlandeau friend. That chaining potential is going to be kind of not maximized. Now I did show in my one of my previous videos that, you know, let's say I had two Noctises, which I do. You can still chain somewhat with it. Like you can get like 5-hit combo, 7-hit combo, 9-hit combo. It's possible, but it's still not going to be anywhere near having two Orlandeaus. So that's one of the only downsides, is that um, you want to have another one in your party or as a friend. But when the only downside is that you want more of that unit in your party, it's not really a downside, I would say. So his go-to skill, of course, is Divine Ruination, which is kind of like the first of its kind, or at least on this level. But it's going to be more common going forward. Just these really mega attacks that chain as well. So that's kind of, you know, the future meta, and the future is here now. That's why he's number one. But again, any of these top 3 units could be in any order depending on your situation. But these are just my opinions, and I wanted to get it out there. Hope you thought this was interesting and thought-provoking. And if you disagreed on anything, or if you agreed, leave comments below and tell me what you think. So I know that when I release these videos, I get a ton of angry people and downvotes and things like that, but I still don't think that that's a reason to not do it anymore. I think enough people find it interesting. So hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you next time.